to have a look at what is happening in the newspaper this morning. We want to have a look at what is happening in the newspaper this morning and just to give you a glimpse of what is happening just around the world in political world, business world, and also sports world, and also a little bit of entertainment. We want to give you a glimpse of what is happening at the back of my newspaper this morning. Dear viewer, I can see the Standard newspaper is having "You Can Run," but that is I can see the picture of Honorable the Governor of Nairobi, Johnson Sakaja, who is at the back of the Standard newspaper. Remember, yesterday there were police officers that were sent to go and look for the governor because he was supposed to appear before the Senate and he did not appear. And for that matter, the government or the Senate sent the police to go and look for the governor, the Nairobi governor, Johnson Sakaja, because he was to be arrested and to be taken before the Senate for a discussion. And that is also one of the stories that is making headlines. Baby, we will have a look at what is happening in just a bit. We also have another story here that Ruto's government spent 80% of tax money on debt. Ruto's government pay 80% on tax money on debts, and they can see the controller of budget, Dr. Margaret Nyakongo, before the National Assembly, that is Public Debt and Privatization Committee at the Parliament on March 30th, 2026. The government is spending nearly 80% of its tax revenue on servicing public debt, leaving President William Ruto's administration with a razor-thin fiscal buffer for development, according to the official National Treasury data published in the Kenya Gazette. That is also one of the stories that are making headlines this morning in the Standard newspaper. On to another story. Let us look at why Governor Sakaja can no longer hide. Why Governor Sakaja can no longer hide. That is also one of the stories that is in the newspaper this morning. And they can see a picture of Governor Sakaja before the Senate Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources at Bunge Towers, Nairobi. That was on March 24th, 2026. Dear viewer, Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja is a fugitive, wanted by the senators and being sought by the police, ordered to arrest him and present him before the county fathers. Governor Sakaja was to appear before the Senate but did not appear. Now the Senate therefore sent the police to go and look for governor and also bring him before the county fathers for an explanation that he owes the senators. We also have Mudavadi Defense 80 billion Ruto Sakaja Corporation. Mudavadi Defense 80 billion Ruto Sakaja Corporation deal. That is one of the stories that are making headlines. And the prime, I can see the prime CS Musalia Mudavadi before the Senate Devolution Committee on March 30th. In the picture here, the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has defended the 80 billion corporation agreement between the national government and Nairobi County government, terming it as a lawful and a constitutionally grounded framework aimed at sorting out some of the challenges the city faces. That is that was an agreement between Ruto and Sakaja. They cooperated so that they helped sort the challenges that the Nairobi city were facing as a county. That is also a story that is making headlines in the newspaper. And we also have battles for numbers inside IEBC's Gen Z voter registration. Battle for numbers inside IEBC's Gen Z voter registration plan. The IEBC chairman, Erastus Ethekon, speaks at the press briefing on 4th February 2026. That is in the picture that is published in the newspaper. And the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, yesterday launched a 30-day mass voter registration drive amid a popular youth-led campaign to enlist new voters. That is the Tuko Kadi initiative that was launched by the Gen Zs and is moving countrywide to make sure that every person takes a voter registration card ahead of the 2027 general election. That is also one of the stories that are making headlines in the newspaper. We also have COB warns of looming 3.32 trillion debt crisis. This is also one of the major stories that are making headlines. COB warns of looming 3.32 trillion debt crisis. And CBO Dr. Margaret Nyakongo before the National Assembly Public Debt and Privatization Committee at Parliament on March 30th, 2026. The Controller of Budget has raised concerns over Kenyans' heightened vulnerability due to its external debt profile, highlighting the risk of default on the 3.2 trillion falling due within the next year. That is also a story that is hitting headlines of the newspaper this very morning. And inside Ruto's emergency talk to avert fuel crisis, I can see President Ruto meeting a delegate from Tharaka Nithi County at State House on August, and President Ruto has moved to calm jitters over a potential fuel crisis occasioned by the ongoing tension in the Middle East, the source of the country's petroleum products. In a statement dated 30th March, the president said he had met key stakeholders on Monday to discuss the country's oil pricing and global supply chain distribution with an aim of cautioning Kenyans from immediate shocks. That is the discussion that has been going on between the president and also the stakeholders to make sure that the fuel crisis doesn't hit the country. That is also a conversation that is still going on, and sorry for that. And we will get the news once the discussion is completed. And we also have concerns mount over protest compensation. Concerns mount over protest compensation. And I can see as the 21-day deadline for victims and families of those killed in protest to register with the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights draws closer. There are concerns over the transparency, independence, and clarity of the compensation process. That is also a story that is in the Standard newspaper and is making headlines. And now we have another one here. State COVID-19 variant in US not alarming. State COVID-19 variant in US not alarming. And there I can see Health CS Aiden Duale presides over the Kenya National Health Institute policy launched and Africa CDC partnership signing. The Ministry of Health has maintained that the current COVID-19 variant spreading in the US warrants attention, but it is not alarming. The Health Cabinet Secretary Aiden Duale says that a sub-variant BA3.2 cicada, though detected in the US, that is a COVID-19 that has been detected in the US, but the state is still not alarming. Politically, let us have a look at what is happening in the political world. I can see Omanyo faults Sifuna leadership. Omanyo faults Sifuna leadership. And Busia Women Representative Catherine Omanyo has criticized Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna over what she termed as a poor leadership within the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM. This has escalated an already simmering internal dispute that has rocked the party in recent weeks. Omanyo was appointed ODM's acting Secretary General on February 11th, 2026, following a decision by the party National Executive Committee to remove Honorable the CSG Edwin Sifuna from the position, accused the senator of sidelining her during her tenure as Deputy Secretary General. In a TV interview on Monday, Omanyo claimed Sifuna rarely delegated duties to her, leaving her largely inactive in the party's day-to-day operations. I was idle under Sifuna, and he never delegated anything. He took it all, did it all, and he was a know-it-all. If you have such a boss, don't stamp his ego because it can backfire. So I let him be, Omanyo said. That is also one of the stories that are making headlines. And I can see Oburu Oginga did his appointment as party leader. Oburu Odinga did his appointment as party leader, hand ODM to Ruto. And a faction of the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, led by the newly party leader Oburu Oginga, on Friday announced that the party will enter into negotiation talks with President William Ruto ahead of the 2027 general election. And even then, the party honchos have already started campaigning for President William Ruto's re-election. The cabinet secretaries drawn from the ODM party already began Ruto's re-election campaign in earnest, while MPs sponsored by the party who benefited from parliamentary positions have elbowed out UDA-allied MPs in praising the president, reasons which critics and analysts associates with ODM weakness ahead of its pre-election talks. That is also a story that is making headlines. And we also have UDA raids ODM in Western region. That is also in the newspaper. And I can see the president addressing the rally at Kakamega. That happened on March 17th. And a new war front is looming in a broad-based government arrangement after President William Ruto led United Democratic Alliance, the UDA party, raided the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, in the Western region, while dismissing calls from zoning by the Orange party. That is also a story that is making headlines. And I can see Gachagua, Ruto using my brother's widow to settle political scores. Ruto using my brother's widow to settle political scores. And I can see the former deputy and the DCP leader Rigathi Gachagua in Gilgil, Nakuru County. And former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has accused President Ruto of trying to interfere with his family affairs, saying the head of state was inciting his late brother's widow against him. That is also one of the stories that are making headlines in the political world. I can also see ODM Linda Mwananchi storms Mombasa and vows 2027 win. The ODM faction christened Linda Mwananchi yesterday. That was on weekend. On Sunday, held a massive rally in Mombasa, signaling that it could evolve into a political party ahead of the 2027 general election, unlike a fortnight ago when the rival Linda Ground faction, led by Mining Cabinet Secretary Hassan Joho, mobilized crowds. Yesterday's gathering at Nonoka Grounds was was largely spontaneous, with youth participation dominating the event. Tension gripped parts of the city as armed youths patrolled the streets. That is also one of the stories that are making headlines in the newspaper and in the political world. I can see also how Linda Mwananchi team outmaneuvered police disruption. That was during their meeting at the Ufungamano House on March 26th, 2026. And from the onset, the government was steadfast that Linda Mwananchi team will not hold their People's National Delegates Convention, the NDC, at Ufungamano House in Nairobi. From Thursday evening, police officers were deployed to stop preparations for the event. Those who had been deployed by the Edwin Sifuna, Babu Owino, and James Orengo faction of the ODM were turned away by the police. That is also a story that is making headlines in the newspaper this very morning. And we now want to look at one last story before we take a quick break. And I can see one interesting story is that bitter sweet orange, beginning of the end of Raila Odinga's ODM. Bitter sweet orange, beginning of end of Raila Odinga's ODM. And yesterday marked a redefining moment, and for some, the beginning of the end for Orange Democratic Movement, ODM. The only common factor in the two parallel ODM functions held in Nairobi was the many times that the late party leader Raila Odinga's name was mentioned, in addition to heavy exchange of words. Those are some of the stories that were making headlines. That was just a glimpse of what is happening in the Standard newspaper. Remember, we are in the morning scope, and this is particularly the newspaper review in the morning scope. And we are taking a quick short break, and we are coming back with business news and also sports news that is happening in the newspaper. Remember to find us on all our social media platforms, and also remember to send us a short code at 24510. We are taking a short break, and we are coming back in just a bit. Stay tuned. Kidogo tu. Newspaper review, particularly we are now looking at what is happening in the business world. We want to have a look at what is happening in the business world. And I can see from the Standard newspaper, I can see Kenya Airways defends a record. Kenya Airways defends record of shilling 17 billion loss. Kenya Airways defends record of 17 billion loss. And I can see Kenya Airways has assured its customers and the public of the company's stability despite its loss-making trajectory in the 2025 financial results. And last week, the national carrier announced a net loss of 17.1 billion, a sharp reversal from shillings 5.4 billion profit recorded in 2024, which had briefly raised hopes of a sustained turnaround. I can see Kenya Airways maintained operation despite reporting a 17.1 billion loss. That is also one of the stories that are making headlines in the newspaper review. That is also one of the stories that's making headlines in the newspaper review. I can also see inside William Ruto's emergency talks to avert fuel crisis. This is also another story that is in the newspaper today. And remember, I read it before. That one is also there. The talks between President Ruto and the key stakeholders that happened on Monday to discuss the country's oil pricing and the global supply chain that is disrupting within an aim of clutching Kenyans from immediate shock. That is also a story that is in the headlines. Moving on is that Kenya advanced crypto regulation through VASP roundtable. Kenya advances crypto regulation through VASP roundtable, and I can see the Kenya is nearing full regulation of its virtual asset sector as authorities and industry players work to finalize rules under the virtual asset service providers framework following the VASP action, that is the VASP Act 2025, which took effect late last year. That is also a story that is making headlines. And as Kenya braces for Iran war, falls CBK forex reserves hit shillings 1.82 trillion. And the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, has disclosed that the country's foreign exchange reserves stand at a record of 14.02 billion. That stands at shillings 1.82 trillion, providing 6 months of import cover as the escalating Iran war threatens to unleash a fresh wave of external shocks on the local economy. That is also a story that is in the newspaper, in the business world. And we also have a story of the as Kenyans braces, that is the Standard Chartered targets key sector in a new financing push. Also, Iran-US war cost Kenyan flour exporters that is shilling 623 million. Tea factory bosses warn new law for sector to hurt farmers. And we also have a Mid-East conflict. Port influences hit tea exporters. We also have small traders and farmers set for shillings 12.5 billion green funding. That is also tourism regulator ties hotel grading to safety drills. And also we have youth seek blue economy financing, and I can also see why Nairobi performed poorly in latest global city ranking. Why Nairobi performed poorly in latest global city ranking. The prevalence of more slums and poor sanitation services in Kenya capital has hurt the city's outlook on the global stage, making Nairobi rank 56 in global attractiveness. Latest report point out these two issues even, as it underscores the city's exemplary performance as an economic hub serving the sub-Saharan region. So those are some of the stories that are making headlines in the business world. And we also have science and technology, why exposing young children to AI content could have irreversible consequences. Konza Inc. deals with a Moroccan firm to deliver AI certification, and Muranga leads country in jobs, digital services. PS Isaboke calls for adoption of technology that addresses consumer needs. So those are the stories that are in the newspaper that is inside inside the business world. Let us also have a look at what is happening in the health sector. Let us have a look at what is happening in the health sector. And we have state COVID-19 variant in the US, not alarming. That is a story that I had shared before. That is also a story that is in the newspaper. And I also have, I can also see health security relies on science, innovation, and equity measures. The picture, a disease outbreak is reported in a city in East Asia within a month. The world is in panic as infections spread rapidly and deaths mount. 3 months later, the disease reached Kenya. A raft of measures follows: empty classrooms, slugging markets, closed places of worship, paralyzed tourism, shortage of medical supplies, and the loss of both lives and livelihood. This was the story of COVID-19. It is also a familiar pattern. Whenever infections, diseases are not prevented, detected, and controlled early, it could be cholera, anthrax, Ebola virus disease, or Kala. That is a story of COVID-19 that happened 5 years down the line. We have also state orders crackdown on peanut butter brand over aflatoxin contamination. State orders crackdown on peanut butter brands over aflatoxin contamination. And the government has ordered a nationwide crackdown on 4 peanut butter brands after laboratory analysis revealed aflatoxin contamination levels that pose a serious public health risk. In a letter, County Public Health Officer, Ministry Health Director General Patrick Amoth directed counties to immediately halt the production and sale of the affected products. The ministry said various sizes of Nati, Kismat, Panache, and Muleka peanut butter producers were found to have exceeded the accepted aflatoxin limit of 15 parts per billion ppb, with some samples testing as high as 934 ppb. The products have since been declared unfit for human consumption. So let us take care while we are buying the peanut butter, because there's an ongoing crackdown to investigate a few brands that produce peanut butter in the country. And I can also see why red meat is not that bad after all. That is also a story that is making headlines this morning. All right, that was in the health. Let us have a look at what is happening also in the sports news. And I can see FIFA series, Harambee Stars thrash Grenada 3-0 to win Braves. Harambee Stars secured their first ever win in the FIFA series after beating Grenada 3-0 to claim third place in a match played on Monday at the Stade Amahoro in Kigali, Rwanda. That is also a story that is making headlines, and that is a big win to the Harambee Stars Harambee Stars secured and put a strong performance from the start, showing a hunger and control as they dominated possession and created several early chances. And the bright start paid off in the 14th minute when Austin Odhiambo reacted quickly to the score from a rebound after Grenada's goalkeeper failed to hold onto Ryan Ogam's shot. That is a story in the sports news. I can also see local stories. Penalty anguish as Harambee Stars fall to Estonia. I can also see Harambee Stars exited the FIFA friendly series in Kigali after a draw with Estonia ended 5-4 to Europeans in the 10th penalty shutout to Amahoro Stadium on Friday night. That is also a story that is making headlines in the sports news. I can also see the Shujaa win silver at Sao Paulo, 7th to qualify for World Championship. That is also a story that is in the newspaper, the sports newspaper. And St. Mary's Yala ready to dance to the national glory. St. Mary's Yala ready to dance after an 8 year in the cold. St. Mary's Yala are back where they believe they belong, and this time they are not just making up the numbers. The 2003 National Rugby 15s champions are heading to Kisumu for the upcoming KSSSA, and the national team one game with renewed belief and a clear target, winning a second national title. And for years, Yala had faded from the big stage, watching as rivals Kisii dominated while they struggled to find their footing. All right, those are some of the stories that were making headlines in the sports news and also business world and also political world. Those were the stories that were making headlines in our newspaper and also the political world, things that happening around you. We were just giving you a glimpse of what is happening in the Standard newspaper, and if you happen to find your newspaper, you will now be able to be having something to go through. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being with us in the morning scope and also the newspaper review. Thank you so much for being with us. From me and the entire team, we say thank you so much and see you tomorrow, same time, same place, for the morning scope and also the morning conversation. See you in just a bit. Coming up is the Kombaka, which is being brought to you by Joseph Okuma. They are preparing, and once they're ready, they'll come on screens and give you what is happening just around you. See you and goodbye.